Welcome to Lesson 6 in Unit 11, A Home for a Penguin. In this lesson, students will work to answer the question, how can we test our habitat to see if it works? In this lesson, students will work in groups to build and test their penguin habitats under the heat lamp and examine the results of testing. They analyze data from testing to compare solutions. Students figure out that because there is always more than one possible solution to a problem, it is useful to compare and test designs. Students make connections to the storyline by testing and evaluating their penguin habitat solutions. They make a claim about their solutions to the problem. There are several opportunities for ELA and social studies cross-curricular connections throughout the lesson. You can look for specific standard connections in the Unit 11 Teacher Guide. This lesson will take approximately 5 to 6 days to complete. To begin the Engage portion, you'll show an image of a penguin habitat. You'll ask students what they notice about it and if they think visitors would enjoy it. You'll then display the engineering design cycle and the design goals. You'll review the steps students have already taken and ask what they can do next for their penguin habitats and how they will know if the habitats work. You'll revisit the driving question board to add any new questions and highlight others connected to the learning goals of this lesson by calling attention to questions about how engineers test their designs. For the Explore portion, you'll have students work in their engineering teams from Lesson 5. Be sure to see the tutorial for guidance on this investigation. You'll give students the materials shown on their drawing on their Team Design Ideas student journal page so that they can construct their prototype and test it according to the investigation instructions. You'll have students record their data on the Penguin Habitat Prototype Testing student journal page. For the Explain portion, you'll invite students to gather to discuss the results from the tests of their penguin habitats. You'll use the provided questions to guide your discussion around the question, how can we test our habitat to see if it works? The goal of this class discussion is to figure out which design works well for our penguin habitat and what we might need to change in our designs. For the Elaborate portion, you'll display the engineering design cycle or direct students to the engineering design cycle student journal page and talk about each step. For the Evaluate, you'll have students complete a gallery walk or give each group time to present their solutions. You can allow each team to show their habitat drawings and 3D models and explain what they did. You'll also have students use the Penguin Habitat Prototype Testing student journal page to mark whether or not they were able to see the penguins in the habitat and how the habitat kept the penguins cool. After viewing all the models, you'll have students complete the journal page. You'll use the Unit 11 Summative Lesson 6 rubric to evaluate students on their design challenge. This summative assessment and rubric covers standards and elements from across the unit, not just this lesson. You'll then invite students to gather to review what they've learned about designing a new habitat for emperor penguins coming to the St. Louis Zoo. The goal of this class discussion is for teams to revisit the learning throughout the unit and to wrap up the unit. To support student sense-making across the unit, you'll orient them back to the driving question board. You'll ask, what have we learned about building a penguin habitat in a zoo that works for penguins and people? And are there any questions that we have not answered? You'll try to wrap up any final questions on the driving question board before the end of the unit. Refer to the Section 2 performance levels in the assessment tracker to summatively assess student progress for this section. You can have students use the self-check form to evaluate their own learning in this section. This is an instructional tool that can be used as a metacognitive practice for students to reflect on their learning, express their engagement and excitement levels for the topics they have learned so far. This tool will also allow students to reflect on their science identities and community. By the end of this lesson, students will have built, tested, and evaluated their habitat solutions. If you have time, you can allow students to rebuild and retest their habitats in the optional Extend portion. They can try adding more layers of insulation or adding a new kind of insulation. For more information about this unit, visit myscipartners.com.